Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Please watch Gracefully Graying on the Gracefully Graying YouTube channel, and also go to our website, gracefullygraying.com, and watch and like us. Today on Gracefully Graying, I am pleased to welcome as my guest Oakland County Family Court referee Lorie Savin as we discuss some key issues involving family law, the court system, and some grandparents' rights issues. Lorie, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
Good afternoon, Henry. Thank you so much for having me.
Lorie, why don't you tell our viewers, first of all, about the divisions of the Oakland County Court so that we can understand a little bit more about what's going on there.
So the Oakland County Court, we have a circuit court and a probate court. The probate court handles the things you'd expect to, like guardianships, conservatorships, estates when somebody passes away. And then the circuit court is a completely different part of the court where we have two divisions. The first is general jurisdiction, and that handles criminal cases and civil cases. So if somebody was in a car wreck and sued another individual, or broke a contract when somebody was supposed to be working on your house and did a shoddy job. The second part of the court in the circuit court is the family division. So that's where we address things like custody and parenting time, child support, people getting divorced. Certainly there's some other matters like juvenile court matters, children that are abused or neglected or end up in juvenile court because they've committed some sort of act that if they were an adult might be a crime.
Lorie, we have an upcoming election. Why don't you tell our viewers about the judicial selection on the ballot for the general election? I know it's going to be a very long ballot, and it's like you have to really go all the way down before you find the judges. So tell us about that.
Right. So judges are nonpartisan. That's the first thing to keep in mind. A lot of people don't realize that, and I know that we're allowed to do straight party ticket voting now in Michigan again. So it's really important that even if you choose to vote straight party, you haven't selected your judges. So keep that in mind. The second part is the judges are really far down the ballot because all of the nonpartisan races are together at the end. And in Oakland County, we have 3 different categories on that box for circuit court judge. We have a handful of judges that are running for re-election. You have to run every 6 years to continue to be a judge. So we've got a handful of judges doing that. There's another seat that is an incumbent who's running for re-election because she was only elected, or I'm sorry, she was appointed recently. So she has to run to continue to serve the entire term. And that's Judge Gant. She's running unopposed. And then we have a third section in the circuit court, which is one of our judges on the circuit court bench, Judge Alexander's retiring. So there are 2 individuals in that race running to fill that open seat.
What are the key functions of a family court?
So the family court judges are assigned to handle disputes involving people that have been in relationships. If they're married and they need to get divorced or legally separated, perhaps they are married with children, or maybe they are not married, but they have children and they're not together anymore. The court really needs to resolve all of the issues that would be related to that family's situation. They also address personal protection orders, and it's not just people that are in intimate relationships where sometimes you need to be protected from. Sometimes it is a neighbor dispute. Sometimes it's a situation between 2 young people. Perhaps they're, in high school and there's some problems with their relationship. Usually it's because they were in a relationship. Also, the family division addresses juvenile court issues. So children who are being abused or neglected by their parents, a petition can be filed by the prosecuting attorney's office in Oakland County is how it gets started. And the court can be involved in those children's lives. Sometimes, unfortunately, kids make poor choices. Maybe they steal an iPad at the school. maybe they engage in illegal behavior like drinking or using drugs underage, they would also come under the juvenile court's jurisdiction.
Lorie, tell our viewers about your role as a family court referee.
So the great thing in Michigan is that we have this concept of the friend of the court who assists the family court judges, and we do this throughout the entire state, in addressing the issues involved with parents with children in the court system. So in Oakland County, what we do is we frequently do a lot of the hearings where people are representing themselves. We have forms available in our office so that if somebody has a court order for child support or parenting time and they need to change those orders, but they don't know how to do it, and maybe they don't have the resources to hire an attorney, we have forms available for them on our website in our office. So we do a lot of those hearings for individuals not represented by attorneys when they need to change the support, the parenting time, or the custody. We also are responsible for overseeing child support enforcement, and that includes, the monthly support obligation a parent has to pay. It includes making sure children have health insurance as required by a court order, and that parents pay their share of the out-of-pocket medical bills, like braces are a huge expense that a lot of parents have difficulty getting cooperation from the other parent. I'm sorry about that. That's a rule in my hearing room, is to turn off your ringer.
Your phone is about to be confiscated.
I guess, Henry, you're in charge of this, so you're going to have to sanction me. So we enforce the orders. Also, we have a huge staff at the front of the court. We've got more than 100 employees, and there, are under 20 referees. But the staff really does a bang-up job of trying to keep the wheels moving and parties' conflict being minimized. So, for example, I've got a custody and parenting time specialist I work with. He fields phone calls all of the time with parents that disagree on issues about parenting time and tries to help them reach resolutions without having to come to court.
Lorie, how does the role of a referee differ from that of a judge?
So referees are hired. They're employees of the court. Judges are elected or appointed by the governor. Referees conduct a hearing and then make a recommendation. Oftentimes, we even have the ability to help the parties reach a resolution. It's not uncommon for people to come into a hearing with me where I'm going to hear all the evidence and make a recommendation, and they end up reaching an agreement between themselves. Sometimes it's an agreement based on my input and what my recommendation would be. Sometimes we spend the better part of the time that I have allocated for them just trying to work together and having a conversation, and I facilitate that discussion. I'm a trained mediator. A lot of the referees have done the 40-hour domestic relations mediation training, and so we use a lot of those skills. Sometimes we can have the parties, even parties that think they always disagree, reach an agreement. So at the end of my hearing, if the parties don't come to an agreement, I make a recommendation. And the parties have the ability to file what's called an objection. But for most listeners who maybe aren't lawyers, they think of it like an appeal. But they have an opportunity to see the judge and have the judge make an impartial, separate decision from the referees if they disagree with it.
Lorie, as you stated earlier, Judge Alexander reached 70, which is a mandatory retirement age. You cannot run again. By law in Michigan, once you turn 70, you can finish off a term, but you can't run again. And that created an open seat. Why did you decide to run for the open seat?
Well, I've been a referee for more than 17 years, and I love my job. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea about that. But I really think there's an opportunity as a judge to do more than what I'm doing. I think that because judges are judges, they are the decision makers. Certainly I do, I conduct hearings and I take testimony and I make recommendations, but when you're the judge, you're in charge and you get to decide the direction that a case and a family is going to go in. And I think that is one of the most important responsibilities of our government, is the court system and judges making fair decisions based on the evidence that's presented to them and based on each unique case's facts. I really believe that people are entitled to justice within our system. And because of my experiences in my own life and my experiences in my career, I really want to make that difference in people's lives to help them move forward. Usually people aren't in court because they want to be there. They're there because they have a problem and they need somebody to help solve their problem. I like doing that. I find a lot of satisfaction from helping people move forward. And I think some of the best cases I have are the most difficult ones that I got when the case started. And I see as things develop over time and with the increased contact with my office, both my staff and myself in hearings, that we can help the parties find a way to get along, especially for their children's interest. And I find a lot of satisfaction. I'd like to be able to do that as a judge. I also think judges have the ability to make a bigger difference in the community as well. I'm involved in some bar activities focused primarily on judicial ethics and civility, and really trying to improve delivery of services to the society from the courts, and also making sure that we're respected and we earn the respect that we should have in our court system. I think I can do more with that if I'm a judge.
Civility, that's an important word. It's become lost more and more, and I know you make that an important factor, and I agree with you. If elected, Lorie, will you serve on the family court? Because for our viewers, the family court is a division, but when you're running for circuit court. And what's happened so much in the past is candidates are run. Many candidates have been elected, and they're plopped into the family court, and they can't wait to get out. And I'm hoping that if elected, you will serve your entire career as a family court judge.
That is my hope. That's why I really want to be a judge, is because I want to be assigned to the family division. That's been my area of practice because that's been my passion since I graduated from law school and passed the bar 25 years ago. I am able to confirm, it was only recently released by the court, that there is a judge in the family division that's requested to leave the family division. So I'm hopeful that this seat that will start in January will be assigned to family division. Certainly it won't be definite because there are some other moving pieces. It looks like we're going to have a second seat open in our circuit. Congratulations to Judge Jarboe. Today she got confirmed by the U.S. Senate to be a federal court judge. So it looks like the governor will get an appointment. So we'll have 2 new judges in Oakland County at some point in time. One will start January 1st, and we'll have to see how long that appointment process takes. But there's definitely one judge that wants to leave family division, and I'm hopeful that if elected, I will get to assume that seat in January.
Now, Lorie, you mentioned some of the experience that you have that would help you as a judge. Is there anything else you would like to add to that before we move on to other topics?
Well, I think a couple things people should just think about when they're voting for judge. And it's not just in my race, but at the district court, at the state Supreme Court level, you really want to look at who it is that is on the ballot. It's so important. People have a difficult time voting for judge, but now that we are able to vote absentee, you have more time to make a decision and do your research. So I really want to impress on people, it's important to do the research. I'm running for judge because I love family court. I've represented children in juvenile court that have been removed from their families, that sometimes they're still with their family and we're trying to give them services so they don't have to be removed. I interview children, and I've been doing that the whole time I've been a referee to try and make the decisions I have to about their parenting time in custody. And if there's anything I can say, the thing that wakes me up every morning, that makes me excited to go to work, that makes me want to give my 110%, is that I know those kids are counting on judges to make the best decision they can for them. Interviewing those kids, they're all sweet, they're all wonderful, and you just don't want to let them down.
Lorie, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Everything changed really in early March when the state basically shut down. How have the courts changed as a reaction and result of the pandemic?
Wow. I think certain things have stayed the same. So people are getting their day in court. People do have access to the courts. In fact, the pandemic has almost made access to the courts a bit of an equalizer, because the people that couldn't come to my hearings because maybe they didn't have transportation or they couldn't take an entire day off of work, now that we're doing Zoom hearings, and the majority of hearings, I would say, from the courts are being conducted remotely. I don't have any statistical data to back that up. That's just based on, the information that I have accessible to me. It does allow more people to participate a little more easily. So I think that's definitely a huge change. Now, I understand some people are having problems with technology and access to the internet, which is a whole nother story and not part of the judicial branch, but everybody have access to the internet is so important, to do job searches, to have information available at their fingertips. It is an equalizer. That's the same thing. And we see some of the consequences, not everybody having equal access in our court system and accessibility. So that's one thing. The other thing is, in Oakland County, I know that there's one judge who's willing to try out doing a jury trial by Zoom. He was willing to be a pilot project, which I think is an exciting opportunity to try and still conduct jury trials during the pandemic. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard that there are any lawyers where both sides agree to take him up on it. So that is
Judge Michael Warren, who I know very well. We spent a half hour talking about that topic. He has no one willing to do it, and I'm actually I've written an article that I've submitted to Latches on that issue. So it's fascinating.
So I think we are having difficulty in that area, trying to figure out how to get jury trials moving forward during the pandemic because of social distancing and things like that. There are other things the court has done to adjust, like some small matters or short matters can be handled through paperwork now or conference calls, and perhaps don't require appearances, and attorneys having to bill their clients, for an hour of their time to drive to the courthouse to do a scheduling order. So I think those are some of the adjustments.
Once the pandemic is over, what do you see as the new normal with regard to the use of Zoom and other technology in the court system?
I've actually been to some seminars conducted both within the state, but also on the national level. And our Chief Justice, Bridget McCormick, is definitely a proponent of trying to continue to use technology as our friend to be more accessible to members of the public and attorneys. I think that she would really like to see us continue to use Zoom for certain types of matters where appropriate, even when we have the opportunity to conduct hearings in person. There are benefits to it. I think that some things that we've also learned that I'm hoping are going to continue. In my office, we're doing a lot more direct outreach in different ways than we used to when it comes to enforcing the court's orders. And one of the things that my staff started doing pretty early on is text messaging individuals to remind them that a child support payment was due or that they had missed a child support payment. And that has made a huge difference. I understand from the Chief Justice at a panel that she was in recently that text message reminders to people of their court dates is showing very positive results. So I think there are definitely some learning lessons through the pandemic that we can move forward with, even when we don't have to do those sorts of things.
It's interesting. I did a Zoom interview for Gracefully Graying with Justice McCormick, and she had the prescience to order Zoom licenses for every court in the state not knowing that there was going to be a pandemic, because this all occurred in 2019. And you're right, she is a big proponent of the use of Zoom. We talked about it, and I believe that the new norm is going to be a lot of hearings, motions are going to be done by Zoom. As far as trials, that's going to be more problematic, and jury trials, I don't think that's going to work through Zoom, but time will tell. You've spoken about some of the activities you're involved in. Are there any others that you would like to talk about before we go into the next topic that's of importance to those of us who are gracefully graying, which are grandparents' rights issues?
I just want to encourage everybody, and we've seen this a lot in my office, that people just need to appreciate that everybody is doing their best. I know as a referee, there are a lot of parents under a lot of stress. I just had a hearing yesterday with parents where one parent can't possibly work her job because of the type of job it is while her child is still home from school because the child's remote learning, and the other parent has suffered a significant decrease in his income because he's self-employed. And so I know they're doing the best they can and they're frustrated. Everybody in my office is doing the best that they can, even though things take a lot more steps and a lot more time and effort. I know I am, I know the judges are. We are all just trying to do the best that we can. So during the pandemic, I would just suggest that everybody be kind to one another. And that is really just a message, I think, that works everywhere, whether it's at the grocery store or when you're at court. You have no idea what's going on in those individuals' personal lives. You know, you don't know if they have a sick family member in the hospital with COVID. You just don't know. So everybody being kind to each other and understanding is probably the most important thing I could say at this time.
Important, yes. Let's go to grandparents. I'm a grandparent. Many of us who are gracefully graying either have aging parents or are grandparents themselves. And a big issue is, what are the rights of grandparents? It used to be that grandparents did have a lot of rights, but Supreme Court and also the Michigan Supreme Court made it much more difficult. And just as an aside, I know of people where there are intact families. In other words, there have been no death, no divorce. And if an intact family says to a parent who's a grandparent, guess what? You're no longer going to be able to see the grandchildren. There is no legal recourse at all. So let's talk about what some of the rules are where there is legal recourse, which is where there has to be a death of a parent or there has to be a divorce.
Right. So children in intact families, there's no mechanism for grandparents to have what we call grandparenting time, which is, visitation, parenting time, but for grandparents. There's no recourse for those parents, as you said. In the case where there is court involvement already because the parents have separated, and maybe it's through a divorce, maybe it's through a custody action because the parents were never married, or there's the death of a parent, then grandparents can file a lawsuit to get grandparenting time. But even if they were to go through that, it is so hard to get your foot in the door. In order for grandparents to even convince the court to consider giving them time with the grandchild, they have to demonstrate that the parent's choice is harmful to the child, mentally, physically, something like that. And how a grandparent can do that, practically speaking, when they don't take the child to therapy or get the opportunity to do something like that, they have to show that the parent is unfit to make that decision for the child, in layman's terms. And the reason that there's that standard is because there had been a prior grandparenting statute, which the Supreme Court decided improperly infringed on parents' rights, because the most important people, according to our Constitution, the way it's been interpreted, is the parents and their decisions for their children. So grandparents aren't on equal footing. That's how the statute's written.
Lorie, what advice would you give to a grandparent who is having trouble having contact or seeing his or her grandchild?
So we've certainly seen grandparents who are frustrated with sometimes their own child, not even the child's other parent, with being denied grandparenting time. And often it's heartbreaking because usually they've been really involved in the child's life. In some cases, they even, at times the family lived with the grandparent. So they were, really involved in raising the child. And then there was some sort of fracture. So those are the most heartbreaking ones. And that's where we really try and steer families to voluntarily do things like mediation, to involve themselves in maybe some family counseling. Perhaps the dynamics of the family are, something unfortunate happened, and maybe the child's mom or dad thinks that the grandparents are just trying to be bossy and nosy and tell them what to do, and they don't want to be told what to do now that they're an adult by their own parent. Sometimes you find that by working with a professional that's a counselor or a therapist, sometimes they can address their family problems. And if that family problem is resolved, then the relationship with the grandchildren is, not blocked anymore. The other thing is mediation can be very helpful. I think sometimes the child's parents feel threatened by the grandparents because of the power dynamic. So going to a mediator, a third person who has no stake in the outcome, who's there just to try and help problem solve, gives everybody an opportunity to express their feelings and their thoughts in a safe environment and maybe get past whatever their concerns are so that the relationship between the grandparents and the child can continue.
Lorie, believe it or not, we're down to less than a minute. What are some final thoughts you'd like to share with us and our viewers before you sign off from Gracefully Graying for today?
Well, first, I want to thank you again, Henry, for having me on your show. I really do appreciate it. It's a treat.
My pleasure. It really is. You're a great guest.
I just want to encourage everybody, the court system, we are trying to do the very best we can during the pandemic and get through every matter that we need to. I only speak for myself, but I know it's true of everybody that I work with. We are all working so hard because we know it's important for people to get decisions. Personally, I want to say that there is a lot on the ballot. Please, please, please research the judicial candidates, not just in my race. Make an informed, thoughtful choice and vote. Don't be one of the people that just say, oh, I don't know anything about it and skip it. Judges have such a big impact on people's lives. You should take the time, be invested, and make a wise decision.
Words well spoken. We're out of time, and all I can say, voting is so important. If you don't vote, then you can't complain about the results. I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying, Lorie Savin, and I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Graying.